Suneera Madhani. Suneera Madhani.
Without much further ado, I'd like to welcome
Suneera.
Hi, I'm Suneera Madhani, a mom of two, daughter of an immigrant, and an unlikely entrepreneur who built $1 billion business. Yes, billion. Now I'm doing it again and building my second unicorn, Worth. Shockingly, less than 2% of female founders ever reach 1 million in revenue, and I'm on a mission to change that. At CEO School, we mentor thousands of women to help them level up in business and in life. We believe that you deserve to have it all because honestly, nothing bad happens when women make more money. Grab a seat because class is officially in session. Welcome to CEO School. Hi, CEOs. Welcome back to the CEO School podcast. It is 2025, and I just am so obsessed with this new year, new mindset, all the things. And today's episode is an interview episode, and I have a friend here with me in person, Michelle Taylor of Women and Wealth. And I am so excited to have her because you are going to, one, just fall in love with Michelle because I'm obsessed with Michelle. She is an incredible, incredible human. And two, she talks wealthy to me.
Yes.
And she talks money to me. And so this episode is all about money, money mindset, wealth, and most importantly, women in wealth, which is all of you and all of us.
That's right.
So Michelle, welcome to CEO School.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. Definitely a committed listener. So to be on set with you today is exciting.
Oh my God, I'm so pumped to have you. Michelle is also part of our Millionaire Founders Club as well, and has been part of all things CEO School for many, many years. We actually met, I don't even know, we met through friends. We met locally in Orlando.
Do you remember the first time I actually met you? I had a total just fangirl moment, I think, where I had known you because of Bernadette.
Okay.
And you were walking down Edgewater with your brother.
Okay.
And you walked past me and you guys were going to lunch. And I ran back up to you and stopped you. And I'm like, Suneera, I mean, I feel like I know you, but we haven't met in person yet. But I just have to say I love you. And you were so gracious and sweet.
I remember that moment. And it's so funny. It is my real life being on Edgewater with my brother. Like we're always, everything that I share with you is real life. Michelle is such an incredible wealth advisor. So let's start with your background, Michelle, and what brought you to wealth and how you've so much knowledge to share. When I tell you, I've put Michelle on every panel ever, every fireside chat, every conversation. She's been part of all of our workshops at CEO School. Like if you have been part of any of our stuff, this is where you recognize Michelle. So she is truly the expert in wealth, taxes, just advising, planning. So the tactical, tangible side of financial planning. But the best part is that she has a huge focus because she is a woman in wealth and she supports women. So she is just brilliant when it comes to our needs. And that is what I'm most excited for the audience to really just take away. So this episode, I hope you're taking notes. If you're driving, if you're doing whatever, don't worry, put it back on repeat. Just make a note to yourself because you are going to leave with the best wealth advice for 2025.
Thank you.
Oh, so pumped. So tell us about your background.
Okay. So growing up,
yeah,
I didn't always have the best role models as far as how to truly build wealth. My parents were divorced. My mom was barely making ends meet, but just a very good household manager of the finances. My dad was an entrepreneur. So I had the guidance of what that life would look like, but he didn't make the best decisions right out of the gate either. So I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I saw the life that it could provide me. I had no idea how to get there. I had no idea how to even source funding or where to start. So I'm definitely an example of figuring it out as you go. I knew it was important for me to never rely on somebody else to give me the life that I wanted. I knew that I wanted to go out and get whatever that looked like. So I graduated from college. I had 2 business degrees, and it was 2007. Terrible time in the economy. Yeah. So my best friend and I decided we were going to move to Italy. And we were going to start a boutique.
I love that.
Perfect timing. I know. We moved to Italy We sold everything that we
What?
could.
I didn't know this about
Yes.
you. Yeah, that has not come up.
Yeah. So I lived in Florence and we sourced manufacturers, vendors. We had relationships. I mean, we were really doing it.
Wow.
And the goal was to bring everything back here to the States and be kind of like an anthropology. That, obviously, after about a year, my dad said, this is not the time. The dollar is so weak. It's just not going to happen. So I came home and I had no money. When we realized that that venture wasn't going to happen, I spent every last penny I had shopping in Florence. So I'll never forget coming home and being in the airport in Philadelphia and trying to buy a magazine. And every single card I had was declined. And it was a moment for sure. So I pivoted, which I know, we talk about all the time in our world, and developed a product that I had thought through in business school. And my dad said, well, now's the time. Think through this and do it. I once again took to Google, and any relationship that I could find, all of them were male, which also was something that really resonated with me. And I brought this product right to launch and, Googled NDAs and templates and how do I do this? I found a manufacturer in Fallsington, Pennsylvania, would fly up there and do consults on what the product was going to look like. And it was something that would protect Christian Louboutins, the bottom of Louboutins. And back in that day, that was a big deal. Yeah. So it didn't happen. I found out I was in talks actually with Neiman Marcus.
No one's figured that out yet because that's still a problem.
I know. They do.
There's like paint now.
I know. And Louboutin, very smart, he has come out and said, well, it's intentional. You're supposed to leave bits of red wherever you go, and romanticized it. So, but I was in talks with the buyers at Neiman Marcus. They were interested in potentially doing a partnership for the first 6 months.
This is your second venture. First failed,
second venture. Okay. So close.
So close.
And found out that
I already have so many questions for you. So no. But like, I just like your mindset is friggin' amazing. I was just being like, I'm going to start again. I'm going to start. You're like young and ready to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a CEO. Like that's where your head was at.
That was always the end goal.
Yeah.
I just had to figure out how to get there.
I was such a reluctant entrepreneur.
Oh, really?
Yes. Such a reluctant. That's why this is CEO school. I didn't go to CEO school. I was like, I am not cut out for this. I did not even think that I could go start a business. Like I had more fear than any and I still do all the time. Like even with my family is the one who's always pushing me, which just sounds like you have such a wonderful father.
Yeah.
And so they're always the ones that are like, no, like we could push forward. But if it was me by myself, I would be that anxiety ridden fear inside out. Like that would be me. Like everything's gonna fail.
Well, it's so intimidating to try and do it and figure it out on your own.
You. I like that young Michelle.
I was ready, and then got dealt another not great blow. I had leukemia when I was a kid. I found out literally about a week before that phone call with the buyers that we had to do IVF. So there were some things. They surprised me on that call and said, come prepared with a prototype for display, which is something they'd never said. So it was like that big roadblock. And then finding out really all I ever wanted was to also be a mom. And so dealing with that, I kind of just couldn't compartmentalize and had to just hit the brakes. So I did. And I had that internal struggle of, do I focus on the baby that's the business or having real babies? And I have 2 kids. So I pivoted again and ended up in conversations with my advisor, who's also a friend of yours. And he was such a mentor to me and became one of our best friends, he and his wife. And he said, Michelle, do what I do. You are so good. You've had so much experience with figuring things out as you go. I work with business owners. Do what I do. And that was 11 years ago. And here we are. And now I do what he does, with the exception that about 95% of my clients are females, and most of them are female founders.
And what is it that you do?
So we do consulting and traditional wealth management.
Mm-hmm.
But with what you alluded to in the beginning, one of the important things for me when we're looking through this that will differentiate the experience between me and someone else at one of the big houses is I am super committed to making sure you only have to get wealthy one time. So what does that look like? It's really understanding, how do you protect yourself? Are your corporate documents in order? We're going through an audit, making sure everything is as bulletproof as humanly possible. And then we go out and we build and we grow your wealth, both within your business, but also without. I mean, you've exited successfully a business. You know what that looks like. But for people that don't and put everything back into the business, then they want to slow down and they haven't thought about that version of themselves. So I try and focus on what both of those versions look like, tax planning, and then lastly, figuring out what is the end result here. Something that you say that I love so much is every business is exitable.
It is.
And so many women don't think that way. And I think that that's one of the things you've really inspired me to try and bring to my clients is if you want to shut this down at the end of the day and ride off into the sunset, by all means, you've earned that right. But if there's any part of you that wants to go through an exit, let's start thinking through what that looks like 5 years out to make sure that you can do that. So really, yes, wealth management, but also more consulting. Just think of me as almost your financial quarterback, like a wedding planner, but just focused on making you wealthy.
I love it. And you do it so, so well. And every business is exitable. And what I mean by that, when I say it, it doesn't have to be an exit in mind of where you sell your company. You might want to pass your company down. You might want to turn it off. Like every business has a cycle and you have to determine, and you have a cycle. You have to decide when is it going to be, maybe you're going to work until you're 90 and that's what you want to do. And then it gets exited at 90 and passed down to your kids, right? But every business, as a CEO, you have a cycle and the business has a cycle. And so you have to plan for that. Michelle, for our audience that's listening who might not have, right? So when is the right time to get a wealth advisor? Because I think the biggest thing for women that I feel like whenever we're together and we're talking to big groups, I feel like we get that question a lot. When is the right time to get a wealth advisor? And how wealthy do I have to be to have an advisor? So can you bust some myths for us?
I can. The right time to get an advisor was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So same thing. I meet with so many incredible women that will say, oh, I'm not ready for this. And the reality is there are some firms out there that have minimums. I don't believe in keeping information and education and help behind a curtain where this magical number has to be accomplished first. So I would say start yesterday. And it doesn't have to be with a firm that maybe does require a little bit more for a client to onboard, but there are people out there for everyone. And I think that that's where pulling in the mentorship side of things, I know for anyone listening, if they came up to you and said, who do I go? What's my resource? You have got a girl.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a girl. We can figure out as a collective of women where to send each other for the right stage that you're in. So I would say, obviously, start out with where you're at. If you're just building a brand new baby business, I would do a lot of research online. I would reach out to the mentors in your life, and I would find one of the traditional wealth management companies that are not necessarily a boutique that will start very simply, even if it's putting every month a few $100s into your reserves and then a few $100s into the market, just having a good cohesive plan needed to start ASAP. And then as far as, I think it's so important also knowing that stage that you're in so that when you find that professional, it's really important to understand that you're asking the right questions, to understand what their process looks like, how are we going to interact and engage, because you never want to leave that relationship feeling like you don't belong, feeling like it's a good old boys club, which I hate to say. My industry is still heavily male dominated. And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't.
And you feel afraid almost to ask the questions, right? Because you're like, oh my God, I should know this or I should know that. And when you don't have somebody that you can relate to, it's so hard to just be, and this relationship is so important. Like this is going to go with you for such a long time. So finding that human connection, as well as you want the competency piece has to be a check, right? So that's an important part. But the human part of it is so, so important. Otherwise, you're not asking the right questions. They're not asking the right questions. The connections aren't built. What's important to you really, really matters, right? So this is about your financial future and your family's financial future. It has to be done right. It has to be done well, and it has to be done with you in mind. And so you have to find that right advisor that you click with, that also gets you as a person.
Absolutely. And I think that to that point, you can go online, reach out to someone and say, I'd love some help. And if they're not the right fit, most that have a fiduciary responsibility will be able to say, we're not the right fit, but these people might be. And just get started. And there are so many women in this industry now, despite what I just said, we are slowly creeping up. Find a woman that will understand, because we plan differently. It's so funny when you sit down with a man, usually they're hyper-focused on what the rate of return is. Whereas women are hyper-focused on what they want the end goal to be.
Yeah.
And if they can get there without taking a lot of risk, usually they don't mind.
Yeah. I think it's such solid advice. So start yesterday. It doesn't matter the amount of wealth. It's just getting you on the right plan. It's so important. And that, it's the rule of compounding too. I mean, investing is where we all need to be at. We all have to think about it. We have an asset, right? We have to build our businesses like an asset. So many times we're starting businesses as women and we're not thinking about it as an enterprise, as an asset. No matter how small your business you think it is still an asset. Treat it as such. You don't treat your home that way, the equity in your home that way. When you buy a home, you think about it as an asset. I don't know where our mentality is shifted on our business. Like our business is an asset, treat it as such. So super important. Now, Michelle, I'd love for you to share. So it's 2025 now. We're in the new year. What are some of your top wealth tips? So talk wealthy to me.
So first and foremost, I think in the beginning of the year, it is critical to have a plan. And something that I'm walking through with all of my clients is we call the exercise an accumulation plan.
Okay.
So I would love for everybody.
I love a good plan.
I know. I would love for everybody to think through, what does the Suneera in 2026 want to see as an accomplishment financially at the on New Year's Day, 365 years from that day.
Question.
Yeah. And then once you have that number, and maybe let's say your goal is, I would love to save $50,000. Well, the accumulation plan is not something that is ever meant to make you feel like you're failing, but instead make it feel like something that's driving you. I know everyone is driven differently by the carrot or the stick. This is very much a carrot, where break down that goal with yourself, with a mentor, with an advisor, and say, okay, on a monthly basis, what can I be doing that is almost thoughtless? It needs to be a number that's substantial enough to be impactful, but it needs to be something that's on autopilot. And then you look at that and you say, okay, on a quarterly basis, especially for you girls out there that have a business that have really heavy seasons where you maybe Q4 is your big quarter. I would say on a quarterly basis, say, okay, additionally, how much do I want to shoot for? And whatever that number is, let's say it's $2,000 additionally quarterly, you have that goal to reach for. And then a lump sum. Some business owners will have, really big wins and will have what we call a windfall of money. And when that happens, just commit to yourself that you're going to put it towards the plan. By doing that.
And Chanel.
Yes. And always. And universe, never an or. But I think that, I have so many clients that'll say, that number sounds so big. And that's okay. Because if you have the plan and you're being held accountable to it, if one quarter doesn't go the way that you were hoping it to, no one's going to slap you on the wrist, but you're going to pay attention a little bit more. You're going to be a little bit more intentional with how you're spending those windfalls, and you're always going to do better than if you didn't have the plan. So I would say the biggest thing beginning of this year, come up with an accountability plan, accumulate, and just have a plan for your money. I think that's the most important thing. and also stretching the rubber band a little bit. So if what you did last year, I would try and push maybe by 10 or 15% more so that you're always green and growing.
And when you say push, means to save a little bit more.
Just save a little bit more.
Save a little bit more.
And invest a little bit more.
And invest. And are we investing? What are we investing in right now? 2025. I hear crypto is pretty hot back. It's back. I'm not investing in crypto, just so that everyone knows. I have invested. I already have some crypto, and I held on to it, which I guess that was good.
Yeah.
So I held on to it, and I'm kind of like, okay, that's where I'm writing it. I've got, where I feel comfortable with it, but I'm investing in the basic stuff, which is the stock market, that mid plan. I'm not on the super aggressive. I'm not on the super low, like, because I'm young, so I can take a little bit of risk, but I like that moderate, stock market investment strategy.
Absolutely.
Where should we be at?
Well, it depends. A lot of it is a tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people, and women in general tend to be more conservative.
Yes.
So if I was talking to you from that perspective, I would say you can probably be a little bit more aggressive than you are for most women. But I also think it's really important to make sure that you understand what the intent of that money is. So for example, you can tend to afford to be a lot more aggressive if you've got any old IRAs or any retirement accounts, because that's the last place you're going to tap into money, because you don't want to pay the penalty for accessing it early. So when clients want to be aggressive, that's always an easy place for them to be. As far as the basics, I would suggest right now, I think that energy is going to be a good place. I think any domestic stock is going to be a good place. I think that there's this spirit of, okay, COVID is over. The economy is cyclical. So we are due some wins in our economy. And I really do feel like you should be investing in companies that you also like. It makes it a little bit more exciting. Something I've started with my kids that
and use. That's right. That's like what we do is like we're always if we're picking stocks, which I actually don't. I invest in funds, so I don't try to pick stocks to invest in. But if there are some, I'm using that product or tool or company anyway, and it's like that's how I like to ensure that I have some of those investments. It makes it a little bit more fun.
It does, and that's something that we've started doing with our kids. Is every year at Christmas, I will buy them one share of a stock, and I will always try and do something that they're into. So my son is into cars obsessively. And last year he wanted to buy one share of Tesla. And he doesn't really get it yet. He's 9. But he'll say, well, I own some of that company, right, Mom? And it's just fun. And then I think that it does lend you to be a little bit more interested in what's going on. So I would say that that's always something to think through. Additionally, like you said, I think it's really important to be very diversified. If you don't know where to start, index funds are great. I mean, easy, low-hanging fruit. Don't overcomplicate things. I would start there. I would invest in the market. And I would also, if I'm thinking through what I want this year to look like, I would tell all of your listeners that we probably want to hold on to some cash to get ready for opportunities that are coming. I think that as business owners, there's going to be an opportunity coming, especially depending on the industry that you're in. A lot of
Are you predicting like a big boom?
I think what's happening is there's a lot of baby boomers that are retiring.
Ooh, yes.
And have nobody
to acquire.
And I'm going through this personally. My dad is selling his window and door company, and my husband's buying it because he knows the world and just he was ready to take the risk. And I think that we're seeing, baby boomers are aging and this is happening rapidly. And so now is a good opportunity where you can buy established businesses. And if you think about it, I'm going to use something very basic, but let's say that you will use my dad's business for window and door. Maybe it's not something that it's an established company, it's done well, but there's so much that needs to be
automated,
brought into the 21st century.
Yeah.
My dad still has a flip phone, you guys. It is no joke. But yeah, I mean, it's an easy win. And especially for business owners that are small but have aspirations to grow, You never know what's out there. So I would say always keep a little bit in an asset that is easily accessible, that if that opportunity comes knocking, which I do believe it will in this 2025, you've got the ability to jump on it.
I love that. And I think when you're invested into the market, I almost view it as cash because I could pull it out.
That's right.
And so when I have money invested into the market, I'm like, that to me it's still growing money and it's equal to cash because I can pull money out of the market versus, investing in companies, which I did a ton of after my exit. And I'm not doing that right now. I'm investing in funds. So my investment philosophy is to invest with people who know what they're doing and that they are smart enough to manage my money across capacity. And it is perfectly okay to pay them percentages of the fees of stuff that they're managing because they're growing it at a greater return. And I find so often that we're holding on to that to be like, oh, why would I pay a fee for this? Or why would I pay for a fee for that? Well, you pay for what you get.
Well, and I think that it goes back to just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Yeah. And you have to think, do any of us want to be an expert in a field that we don't spend our time or are not paid for? And yes, most people are taking a percentage. It's very small in the grand scheme of things. And as long as your accounts are being managed and you feel taken care of, let somebody else do the heavy lifting.
And it will grow. It's growing at a greater return than what that nominal percentage is. And so that's what I look at the end of the day. It's like net, what am I netting? And I'm always growing. And that's what I care about.
And that's all that matters.
And getting experts, I think that it is important to have that right philosophy. And, I see a ton on, I get really frustrated with the TikTok wealth advisors. Can we just talk about that for a second? Because I feel like so many women in CEO school will be like, we'll talk about tax planning, right? And be like, oh, I could write this off and I should write this off. And you and I have had many conversations in this room at our retreats about this and we do share. You should be part of groups that are sharing the best tax saving tips. Your business is also a tax vehicle. How do you maximize your entire personal portfolio, your business portfolio? That's why you need somebody smart to look at it. But so often we're just scrolling through and I'll get advice from a 22-year-old who doesn't actually own a business, who actually isn't a wealth advisor and is giving me tips on how I can put my kid on payroll, which it might be true, but it might not be applicable to my business.
Absolutely. And I think that we have access to everything out there in our pocket. So it's hard, especially when you're seeing other people do things and you think, well, why am I not? It is imperative that when you are doing something relating to your money, your livelihood, that you make sure it's the right fit for you. And that's where, I built 2 businesses that I did on my own. So I love doing your own research. But then you've got to find the right people to say, Mr. CPA or Mrs. Consultant, I want to put my kids on payroll. Does that make sense? And as long as it makes sense, wonderful. But there are so many things you have to do on the back end to cover your buns if you ever got audited. You can't put a 1-year-old on payroll paying them $20,000 a year for what? It's important to do your due diligence on the back end. So don't get your advice from people and just automatically assume it's for you. I have no issue with people getting ideas, but partnering with mentors and professionals that can point you in the right direction.
What is some of the crap that you see that because I'm sure I'm not even a wealth advisor. I'm around so many CEOs. So what, tell me, I want to hear it from your, what are you scrolling through that you're like, that is not true. That is not true. Or that just irks at you.
It is usually the low-hanging fruit where most people, it's the same strategies. It's like paying your kids.
It's the clickbaity stuff.
Yeah. It's how do you write off an entire family vacation? And then they just say one little tidbit and people think that's it. How do you send your kids to private school tax-free? There are ways, but it's such a clickbait. Augusta, renting out your home. We do that for certain clients. There's just so much of that. It is 9 times out of 10 related to taxes.
Okay, so now on the flip side, what are some really awesome strategies if you work with a licensed professional that can do it well? What are some awesome tax saving tips for 2025 that we could be thinking about structuring in our business or ways to really leverage our business as a tax vehicle. So any great strategies that you can share, knowing that our women are way smarter and way more amazing, and they will go seek a professional to ensure that it's done right.
So you said one of my favorite terms, leverage. And I think that when you said earlier that you have to consider your business as an asset, ladies, we are sleeping on this. When you talked about investing your money because it's accessible, not only is it accessible, but you're able to oftentimes open a line of credit against money that's in the stock market and create what we call positive arbitrage. So if you can leverage your money and have it making money in two places, that is the golden nugget. And that's the kind of thing that we're talking about on golf courses, right? That guys are talking about that we're not. So let's change that. I would say you want, from a tax perspective, to look at things that are not commonplace. For business owners, so often CPAs, and so much love to all you CPAs out there, but if I'm a business owner and I'm trying to grow and scale my business or buying maybe a new office space, something of that nature, the last place you want to put your money is into a retirement account. And so often that's the advice that they're given. And that's fine advice, but it's really understanding what the purpose is. So most business owners are growing and scaling. We don't want to lock up our dollars until we're 65 years old. So I would say one of the best things you can do for yourself is leverage accounts to allow them to create money for you in multiple places. For example, if you've got, let's say, and I'm going to make up some numbers, but if you could take a $100,000 investment account, leverage it, and then go buy some equipment that's going to make your business money, you are winning. You're getting the depreciation on the equipment. That's helping you on the tax side. You're growing and scaling your business, and your dollars are still invested in the stock market. So I think that those kind of things from a tax perspective, there's a lot we can do. There are different ways that you can invest your money in things that will help from a tax perspective. Oil and gas is a big one we're talking about right now. There are funds, so you don't have to actually invest in the rig that's pulling up the oil, but there are funds that will give you a tax deduction of almost about 80% in year one. Think through things like that. And even if you're not at the place where you can do that yet, make that a goal on your accumulation plan.
I like this accumulation plan. I think that's a really great tip. I think, in 2025, as we're thinking about 2025, something that even with, like as you make money is complex, right? So even as we've scaled our wealth, like it's still an active, like Faisal and I still have our monthly finance meeting. I still have my monthly finance meeting across each of my different LLCs and businesses. I still have so like there's still structure that needs to go in place to manage it. And I think that that's one of the things I really want to encourage, CEOs and female CEOs, like for us to be like, we have to be armed enough to be dangerous. We don't have to know it all. We have to have the right people in place, but we can't have this mentality or like, oh, I just don't deal with that. Somebody else deals with that. So often this is why we've been left out of those conversations. So we have to be able to have those conversations. You can have experts that lead it and you should have your team around you, but you should be fully aware of your finances, your personal finances, your business finances and the team that supports you in those finances. I want you to be able to lead those conversations and have structure in place so that you get that reporting, you have that visibility, and you are in control of your money, making your money decisions.
I always tell people you don't have to be rowing the canoe in whichever direction your family is going, but you have to be in the canoe. Mm-hmm. I have seen so often where women are surprised by life and they're left. I'll never forget, I had a client once, her husband was having an affair and they were separating. She was blindsided and they lived a very comfortable life. And she called me in a panic because her lights got turned off. And it wasn't because she didn't have the money to pay the bill. It's because she didn't know how to pay the bill. And you guys, if you understand what your money is doing, the purpose behind what you're doing, and can feel like a team, whether it's with your business partner or with your life partner, it is a game changer. That's one thing that you said that I think I want to come back to because it's helped me so much. I would encourage all of you all to have, we call it in my house, a State of the Union. My husband and I sit down every quarter and have a State of the Union. What did we spend? How are things looking? What do we have big coming up this year or this quarter? And just feeling like we're on the same page, because obviously in our house, the dynamic's a little bit different. He is the one that's saying, well, I don't know where anything is. I don't do anything. It's Michelle. And I have to say to him, babe, you have to know.
Because you are the
Come
wealth
on.
advisor.
You got to know. So just make sure you're having the right conversations. Know your numbers. Know what's happening with your business partners and your spouses.
So important. And even just, there's so many tools out there that can support you with it. So like we utilize Rocket Money is a tool that we utilize. That's great. And it is, so simple to upload your stuff, and we have a budget in place. And even, I'm telling you, I have a budget in place.
Absolutely.
I have a budget for luxury. I have a budget for shopping. I have a budget for our day-to-day. We call it like our monthly burn, right? Of like our mortgage, our rent, the kids' school, nanny, whatever else that we have in our lives. Like what is the day-to-day to keep the lights on? That's where our monthly budget is. And then you can get off track. So it is important for us to have what is coming up. What is our travel bucket for this year? So we have these buckets that we decide every year of how we're spending our money and where we want to be better. And it feels good when you're in control of it or you do well. Like there is that sense of, I feel really proud when I'm able to stay within the rails that I'm intending to stay. And
Absolutely.
I'm, investing what I'm supposed to be investing. And, it's so critical. And so it is nice to have that with your life partner if you can. And if your partner is the one that's doing it, like you have to be the one to get involved. We see it so often. And I even see it all the time for just even as women CEOs, like even for our own business, we're like, oh yeah, the bookkeeper just handles this or the accountant just handles it. Like you have to know where your money is so that you can make the right decisions on cash flow as well. Like how much cash you should be keeping into the business. And how much you should be taking as distribution. Like these are things that you need to ensure that there is a business consultant on the other side of like your team. So your accountant and your bookkeeper should be able to, or your wealth should be able to act as your consultants. You don't need to have a separate consultant. They are your consulting team to be able to support you in that. And so ask those questions and be like, there's no such thing as a dumb question. I think sometimes we overthink. I overthink it all the time. I used to really overthink it with, as our company was scaling. And so we, once I passed like that, 8-figure, 10 million plus in recurring revenue, and I'm like this big CEO now, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to ask our, account. We had our monthly finance meeting, and I felt like I was so fearful of just feeling like I was dumb or something, asking the wrong questions. And, it's not, there is no, and it's just clarity. And oftentimes I found that when I asked it, Sal would be like, oh yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
You know what's so crazy about that is it all goes back to the confidence gap that we have. And I think that leans so much into the money gap, the pay gap, all of those things that we experience. Because if a woman like you who's running a company is scared to raise their hand, feel okay that you're afraid to raise your hand too, but raise your hand. I think we can all just do so much better about saying, screw it. I don't care what people think in the room. I'm leaving with the information I need to make good decisions. And so often, I feel like the other really dangerous piece is when you feel like you're okay with financials and you're doing well, your business is doing well, get a little loose on what you're spending. The people that do the absolute best with their financials are the ones that are obsessively looking at it. When you start to have that honeymoon phase that I feel like so many of us do, where you're like, okay, I'm over that hurdle. I'm doing okay now. That's when the overspending starts. So pay attention, ask the questions, raise your hand, because there's guaranteed at least one other person in the room that has the same question.
I love that you also talked about that honeymoon phase, because I do feel like no matter what success looks like, you still need to be like, have whatever just know where you're going, and you just feel so much better. I will say that, money is the biggest source of stress. If you like in the world, money is like the number one thing that we all stress about is money. If you can remove that, and it's not about making more money, right? Like it's just understanding your money. And if you feel comfortable with that, that's half the stress is just that, is understanding where it's at, feeling comfortable with your financials so that you can make, what you said, better decisions. So critical, so important. And you are right on that honeymoon period when you feel like, oh, I got stuff, in check.
I'm fine.
And then you're off here making this decision, and it's okay. You should have some flexibility. But that quarterly check-in, that State of the Union to say, okay, all right, this is how we're going to, get back on track, and having goals to stay on track, super important. And the thought that I had earlier when I was saying it's 2025. So at the end of every year, we do an entire review of like what happened this last year, where do we want to be better, and where do we want to be better, and we set our money goals for
absolutely.
This next year. So what you talked about is the plan. It is important to have the plan, and I hope today's conversation, I don't know where it was going to go. It's going to go amazing. I knew that. I hope you got some tips. I hope you're ready to make a money plan, and that you're getting that team around you, ask those questions, and just put it in your calendar. Like just have that money meeting on the 1st of the month, the 5th of the month, like to reflect back on that next month. So important. Game changer. Just getting that in place.
And so many women that I speak to will say, I haven't done this yet because I don't even want to look because it
I know that
makes me so anxious. I was going to say, I've been there. I remember, how I came into this world was making terrible money decisions when I was younger. I remember that feeling, waking up in the middle of the night thinking, okay, how am I making payroll, or how am I paying this big debt? And that uncertainty comes because of not feeling in control. The minute you just stare it in the face, it changes everything.
It does. I feel like I've made the worst money decisions. The worst. I still make sometimes the worst. And it's only when I'm like off track, or I'm not consulting or talking to anyone. It's so critical. Why do you think, so to close this off, why do you think because that feeling, it's the worst feeling. And I don't feel like my husband ever feels that way, or my brother ever feels like, they just look at money and it's just money. Why is it that we are this way as women? Like you support so many women. Tell me why.
I really just believe it's because we are more focused on the end result. And so as women, I think it goes back into that maternal instinct of, I have people relying on me. Whether you're a mom or not, people rely on women. And I just feel like there's so much guilt that we've built into everything. We don't necessarily feel like we deserve the spend that we're making because something else will have to be sacrificed. I really just feel, and guys don't think that way. Guys are a little bit better at celebrating the wins sometimes without feeling the guilt. They are better at thinking it's money, and where it came from, there is more. And that is such an important thing for us to remember. You can make more money, but you have to have a crystal clear vision of, okay, this is where I'm at. This is where I got off track. This is where I need to get back on track. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did before to make the money. Women just need to get better at pivoting quicker and giving themselves grace. And I think the biggest thing is also reaching out to people and not suffering in silence. A lot of times, I'm sure for me, when I was—
It's shame and judgment is what I think it is. I feel like I have shame and judgment around money if I'm not making the right money decision, asking the right question, because I'm internally judging myself as well. Like there's shame and judgment inside of me when it comes to money. I don't know. And I grew up in an abundant household. So I feel like I can also see where people had very harsh, like, where if, money was a stressor in their parent, like if it was a stressor, you can have really bad money mindset. I feel like I had a very abundant growth mindset. And so, but even me who had all of this amazing, I still have that shame and judgment when I make like bad decisions. So I'm like, there is something innately, and I think it's the guilt. That somehow
knowing better or doing better because other people are looking at you. I don't know. Yeah.
It's the story in our heads too. It's that psyche, because we're always in our head. So we're creating and narrating stories that don't exist in our head versus men can look at it and it's like, it's just a transaction. It's just money. It's just a number.
They're really good at taking the emotion out of money.
Emotion out of it. That's it. That is the answer. we put too much emotion around it.
Well, and think of it this way. I don't know about you, but if I were to sit down with you and open my books and say to you, what should I be doing? It would be really easy for you to say you should be doing X, Y, and Z because it's amazing. But then when you have to do it for yourself, even myself, I mean, I do this every day. I tell people one of the hardest things, and I know you know this, women tend to hold on to more cash than we need because, again, it's security. I tell women all the time, you have too much cash. Let's deploy some of it. But then I look at my own situation. I'm like, Michelle,
you have too much cash.
You have too much cash. And it's like pushing that button. It's hard. It's hard to do it for yourself because you have an emotional tie to your own money. I can tell you all day what to do because it's your money.
So that's the answer. So we just need support from other women
to tell us
what to
be
do.
Emotional.
Yeah, not to be just to make the decisions for us.
Just a number.
Michelle, this conversation I knew was going to be so great. I feel like we could just sit here and chat all day. I'm very excited to share. You have a new podcast, Talk Wealthy to Me.
I do. So Talk Wealthy to Me. I'm so excited. And what this podcast is really focused on is understanding the stories that we all tell ourselves and how are they impacting us with money. So I hope that the listeners can come and learn tidbits, understand those easy wins, but also to unpack. One of my favorite things that I ask everybody is, tell me how you defined success for yourself when you were younger, and have you made it there? Have you not? And what does it feel like where you're at today? I think that those stories are so exciting. I'm having you on because I would love to know. I can't wait to be on. Yeah, I would love to know what the 10-year-old Suneera would think about the 26-year-old Suneera's
oh my goodness.
Vision and life. It's fun.
I'm sure she'd be really proud. So
I think
she'd be really, really proud. And I can't wait to be on the show. And y'all have to check out Talk Wealthy to Me. Michelle, where can we find you online for support? I know you support so many women. If they're interested in getting an audit, I know you'd help them. Where can they find you? Yeah, even a question. If you heard anything today that you think, oh, I want to know more about that, please reach out to me. I'm happy to always be a resource. So you can find me, obviously, Talk Wealthy to Me, but additionally, women_in_wealth on Instagram. And then inside the community, womeninwealth.co. Perfect. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, bring a bestie, share this episode. Michelle is one of my besties. I am so excited to just continue to have more incredible guests on the show. Let me know if you loved today's episode. We'd love for you to leave a review. This is how we grow as podcast hosts. And so if you loved it, share it, please share it, and tag a business bestie that also needs to tune in to CEO School and Talk Wealthy to Me. I'll see you next week. I hope your new year is off to the most incredible start and you're loving the conversation. I will see you next week at CEO School.